Welcome to our English podcast. Let's practice speaking together.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to the Just Speak English podcast. I'm Hailey.
And I'm Chase. Really glad you're here with us today.
Today's episode is a little different from our usual format, and I think in the best possible way. We're going to analyze one of the most famous speeches ever given in the English language. Steve Jobs' commencement address at Stanford University in 2005.
If you've never heard it, we highly recommend watching the full video on YouTube after this episode. Just search Steve Jobs' Stanford Speech 2005 and it'll come right up. It's about 15 minutes long and genuinely worth every second.
Today, we're going to break down the key ideas, the vocabulary, and the storytelling structure of that speech, not just as a language lesson, but because the ideas themselves are powerful enough to change how you think about your own life.
Subscribe if you're new here, and let's get into it. 5 words and phrases straight from Jobs' speech and the themes around it.
First, commencement. A commencement is a graduation ceremony, the official beginning of a new chapter. The word itself means beginning, not ending. The commencement speech is meant to inspire graduates as they step into the next phase of their lives.
Second, dots. In the context of Jobs' speech, dots represent individual experiences or decisions in your life. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't see how they'll connect when you're living them.
Third, intuition. Intuition is the ability to understand something instinctively, without conscious reasoning. Jobs trusted his intuition even when it didn't make logical sense to others around him.
Fourth, mortality. Mortality refers to the state of being human and therefore subject to death. Jobs used awareness of mortality as a tool for clarity and urgency. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose.
And fifth, hungry. In Jobs' context, hungry doesn't mean wanting food. It means having deep ambition, curiosity, and drive that is never fully satisfied. Stay hungry. Keep wanting more. Keep seeking. Keep growing. Okay, commencement, dots, intuition, mortality, hungry. Let's go.
Hailey, before we get into the speech itself, why do you think this particular speech has stayed so relevant for 20 years? Millions of people still watch it, share it, quote it. What makes it so different?
I think it's because Jobs did something most speakers don't do. He didn't give advice, he told stories. 3 personal stories from his own life, each one built around a real experience of loss, failure, or uncertainty. And because the stories were real and specific, not generic or motivational poster vague, they felt true in a way that direct advice rarely does.
That's such a good observation. He never says, you should do this, or here's my advice for your future. He just tells you what happened to him and lets you draw your own conclusions. And somehow, that lands so much harder than being told what to think.
Oh, exactly. So let's go through the 3 stories. The first one is called Connecting the Dots. Jobs dropped out of Reed College after 6 months because he felt his parents' savings were being wasted on an education he wasn't sure about. But he stuck around the campus for 18 months after dropping out, taking classes that interested him, including a calligraphy class.
And at the time, that calligraphy class seemed completely useless. No practical application whatsoever. But 10 years later, when Jobs was designing the first Macintosh computer, he incorporated that calligraphy into the fonts. The Mac became the first computer with beautiful typography, and if he hadn't taken that class, none of it would have existed.
And the lesson he draws from that is something I find genuinely profound. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will connect, even when you can't see how yet. That trust in your own curiosity, in your own path, is what allows you to follow what interests you, even when it doesn't make obvious sense in the moment.
And how does that connect to English learning, actually? Because I think there's a really direct parallel here.
So direct. How many people studying English right now don't fully know why? They just feel pulled toward it. Maybe it's a career goal, maybe it's a dream of travel or connection, maybe it's just curiosity about another world. And sometimes it's hard to justify the time and effort when the dot of fluency feels so far away. But Jobs would say, trust it, follow the pull. The connection will make sense later.
The second story is about love and loss. Jobs co-founded Apple at 20, and at 30, he was fired from the company he had built. Publicly, dramatically, fired. And he describes that period as devastating, the worst thing that had ever happened to him.
But then something shifted. He said that being fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to him because the heaviness of success was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. He started Pixar. He fell in love with the woman who became his wife. All of it happened because he lost the thing he thought defined him.
And the line that always gets me from that part of the speech, I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. Less sure about everything, it freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life.
The lightness of being a beginner again. I think that's one of the most beautiful phrases in the entire speech. And it connects so deeply to language learning. Because being a beginner is something learners often feel ashamed of. Not knowing a word, not understanding something, making a mistake. But Jobs reframes that lightness of not knowing as freedom, as creativity, as possibility.
The third story is the most intense one. It's about death. Jobs had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer the year before. He had been told it was incurable. And then, miraculously, it turned out to be a rare operable form, and he survived. But that experience of sitting with the reality of death, of genuinely believing he was going to die soon, changed something permanently in how he thought about time.
And the core idea from that section is one of the most repeated quotes from any speech in history. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice.
And then the ending. Simple, direct, unforgettable. Stay hungry, stay foolish. He borrowed that phrase from the final edition of a counterculture publication from the 1970s called The Whole Earth Catalog, and he gave it to the graduates as his parting wish. Stay hungry. Never stop wanting. Never stop seeking. Stay foolish. Don't be afraid to look naive, to take risks that seem unreasonable, to believe in things others haven't seen yet.
And honestly, every time I hear that ending, I feel something. Because it's not a complicated idea, but it's one of those things that sounds simple and turns out to be one of the hardest things to actually live.
And from a language perspective, What can English learners actually take from studying a speech like this? Because beyond the life lessons, there's a lot going on structurally that's worth noticing.
So much. First, notice how Jobs uses simple vocabulary. This is a Stanford commencement speech, one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And he speaks almost entirely in short, clear sentences. No jargon, no complex academic language. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. That sentence has 9 words and is unforgettable.
And that's a lesson for English learners too. Clarity beats complexity every single time. The most powerful English is almost always simple. Short sentences, concrete images, real stories instead of abstract ideas. Jobs was a master of this, and it's something you can practice deliberately in your own speaking.
Second, notice how he uses pauses. When you watch the video, you'll see he doesn't rush. He speaks slowly. Pauses between ideas. Lets the silence work for him. We talked about this in our confidence episodes. Silence is not awkward in a good speech. Silence is emphasis. It tells the audience that what just came before was important enough to sit with for a moment.
And third, notice the personal details. He doesn't say, when I was young, I made an unconventional decision. He says, I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford, and all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. Specific, concrete, human. Those details are what make a story feel real instead of rehearsed.
所以現在當交波這麼多貴不多啦你能力寫吧上面の 메시지 부르 사이반틀라 에디아 이제 타지엔나이 시미 홈에 주가다 시대라 바츠와일 때마 뜨예 소 기다르그 프르초도 시즈 왔다이치.
Quick vocab recap. Commencement, a graduation ceremony, literally meaning a beginning. Dots, individual experiences that connect in retrospect. Intuition, understanding something instinctively, without reasoning. Mortality, the human condition of being subject to death. And hungry, in Jobs' context, having deep and ongoing ambition and curiosity.
And the 3 big ideas from the speech. Connect the dots by trusting your path even when you can't see where it leads. Embrace loss and new beginnings as opportunities for creativity. And use the awareness of your own mortality to cut through what doesn't matter and focus on what does.
Comment below. Which of the 3 stories resonated most with you and why? We genuinely love to know.
And seriously, go watch the full speech on YouTube after this. Search Steve Jobs Stanford 2005. Watch it in English, with English subtitles if you need them. It's 15 minutes of some of the most powerful English you'll ever hear.
Thank you so much for listening to this one. It was a special episode for us to record. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone!
Bye!